Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. To my right here is my buddy, Shadow the Night Owl. He is the mascot and the spirit animal of the channel here. And I've had an interesting couple days here. I'll get into that in a minute. But in today's stream, what we're going to do is we're going to watch Dr. Gary Brucato's appearance on Brian Entin show. And then there's some Tony Breuski videos we can go over. Maybe the Ashley Banfield video from the other day, if there's interest in that. But some exciting announcements, though, from earlier. I interviewed Matt Murphy today, and I had a great time speaking with him. The time just flew right by. Honestly, I wish I had more time with him. But he said he'd be willing to come back on the show at a future date, and I would love that because I think it went great, and I think that people are going to be really excited and interested and entertained by that discussion. Hello there, Dee and Chatty Cathy. How are you both? Shadow and I say hello as well. What was the other announcement? Oh, yes. The other announcement is Shadow and I have become Texas wildlife experts the last couple days because on Facebook, we've been talking about Gracie, the 3-year-old giraffe that escaped from Cedar Hollow Ranch. And that turned into a massive debacle because apparently there's exotic game hunting in Texas. And I made another post about that. I might go over this in a whole different video tomorrow. I don't want to take up people's time in this video about it, but maybe tomorrow. So Dee, Chatty, Miss Kim, how are you, Miss Kim? Would you like to hear me talk about Gracie tomorrow during the day? Gracie, the 3-year-old giraffe? Because I learned a lot. Because some of those posts went viral. And a lot of the big game hunters and the people that live in that area were not very happy with me. But to which I didn't say anything that was false. Right? They just didn't like me calling attention to what could happen, I guess is what it is. But I'll go over more of that tomorrow. But with that, let's jump into the... And also, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite Dr. Gary Brucato on the show. I think he'd be a great addition if he's willing to come on. I would love to talk to him about all these cases, Nancy Guthrie, and his experience as a doctor too, because I think that's also just as interesting. And that is also what I did with Matt Murphy, where the first half, we talked about overall things that can apply just generally. And then the second half, we talked about more specific things, which I think was good. Hello there, Jackie. How are you? How are things going with your new softcast? What did Dee have to say? I made the appointment for tomorrow to put my old dog to sleep, so I'm sad. Oh, dogs are family, Dee. So I'm very sorry to hear that. Shadow is very sorry to hear that too. So send good vibes, please, to Dee. Shadow and I are sending good vibes to Dee. Hello there, Eric. I'm not sure what that means, but welcome. Nanny Goat. What is shaking there, Nanny Goat? Shadow and I say hello. I don't know what any of that means either, Eric, but hopefully you're not trolling. Jared feeling footloose and fancy-free. Well, I think that's a good thing, is it not? Nanny Goat says, Dee, I'm so sorry. Sending big hugs. Yes, very good. I'm glad the community is supporting one another. And as always, please make sure to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not already. Maybe tell a friend or 5 or 10 about the channel here. And as always, the super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl soy-free hootie snacks because he's very hormone and testosterone conscious. Hello there, Laura. Shadow and I were very pleased to see when we stopped by Laura's chat today, Anxiety Art Adventures, that she was repping the Black Sheep Nation shirt. So there's Black Sheep Nation shirts and Revenge the Black Sheep shirts available. Check those out. Laura helped me design the Black Sheep Nation shirt, by the way. Hello there, girl mama. How are you? Who is mid, Miss Kim? Yeah, you said that. I felt bad about that, Laura. I did not mean to make you nervous. But let's hop into this Dr. Gary Brucato on Brian Entin appearance here. Oh, mod. That makes sense, Miss Kim.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's subscribed. I'm on the road right now. I'm with Mo. Say hi, Mo. We're about to hit the road for a story. In this episode, though, digging more into the Nancy Guthrie ransom notes. Super interesting interview with criminal profiler Dr. Gary Brucato, who frankly just doesn't necessarily believe the notes are real. He also thinks the second note may have been written by a female, which I'm going to explain. And then also I'm diving into the whole Bitcoin element of this and why it is so hard to trace. Getting into all of it in this episode of Brian Entin Investigates. All right, hey guys. So I'm going to get into, in a second, my interview with Dr. Gary Brucato, who is a forensic psychologist and also a criminal profiler. So really his job is getting in the mind of criminals. And I'll explain exactly why he doesn't, for the most part, believe that the ransom notes are real, and B, thinks that the person who wrote the second note could actually be a woman, and he explains why. And again, these guys go through every little word that we...
So this is going to be interesting, but how many of you think the second ransom note was written by a woman? I couldn't really tell. But again, how much of it do we even know? How much of the note have we even seen? I don't think we've seen the whole thing yet, have we? I think we've heard some. We've heard what it said, but who has read it? And why do they think a woman wrote it? And do you think that really matters? I guess there's a bunch of questions that it brings up, right? Now, you all know what I think the motive in this case was. I think the motive was a hit. I just don't buy the fact that this was financially motivated. I think of all the ways to make money, this is just not how you're going to do it. I think of all the ways that you could, there's got to be better ways that are more of a sure thing. Now, that being said, when I was talking to Matt Murphy today, he did go over the case of Skylar killing the Hawks many years ago. And they did do that for a financial motive. They killed them both, but they had a much deeper plan. And it almost worked for them too, but they would have been financially free for life. But I'm not seeing this case, what they expected to get financially from this case. I don't know. I think it was a hit, and I think it was a punishment or revenge. Probably because of Savannah. And that's not to blame Savannah, but I don't think this happens if Nancy Guthrie is not Savannah Guthrie's mother. I just don't. I mean, does anyone think this would happen if she wasn't Savannah Guthrie's mother? And again, that doesn't mean it's Savannah Guthrie's fault. This is not her fault in any way. I just do think there's a correlation there. But what do you think?
No, and analyze it. So I'll have that full interview, and I'll also have the interview with Sean O'Connor, who is the cybersecurity executive, because I have had a ton of questions about the Bitcoin, and I still don't understand how, with all the capabilities of the FBI, they're not able to track the Bitcoin. So that's also coming up later in the episode. But first, I wanted to give you guys a summary. Sheriff Nanos, who hasn't done any TV interviews, by the way,
and by the way, so Livin says, do I not think it was an obsessed fan? I'm not ruling that out. I'm not ruling out the possibility that there's some off-the-wall explanation. In fact, I think I would put an off-the-wall explanation above a financial explanation, honestly. And it's like the person that tried to assassinate Reagan that said, I did it to impress Jodie Foster. Who would have thought before they found out, oh, yes, that's the motive, to impress Jodie Foster. Now, nobody would have thought that. And I think in this case, something along those lines is not impossible. Some sort of obsessed fan, that's not impossible. In fact, I put it above the financial motive, honestly. So I'm glad Livin mentioned that.
Tried to get interviews with him several times, but I haven't seen him do any interviews. Even sometimes he'll do the local stations in Tucson, like at the 4-month mark, 3-month mark. We're now at almost 5 months since Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Haven't seen him much lately, but he did go on a local radio show in Tucson over the last couple of days. And he's been on that radio show before. And I'm always interested listening because it seems like he has a relationship with the guys on the radio there. And just seems some.
And yeah, I would interview Brian Entin. I think the hardest part for me would be just getting a hold of him. But once I did, I would certainly do it. And I think he does have integrity, and I think he does a good job. So he has a lot of knowledge about all of these cases. How many people has he talked to about all these cases, right? He is like the Joe Rogan of true crime in a way, where he talks to everybody. Anyone who's worth talking to in true crime, he talks to. So I'd be more than down to interview him. And now that if he sees that I've interviewed Matt Murphy and other popular people like Dr. Salerno, Dr. Simon, Dr. Z, Dr. Keith Campbell, again, that would probably help, man. He probably would want to.
Times to be a little more open about things that are going on. So I want to tell you a little bit about what he said. He said that the FBI is in charge of the ransom notes, which we knew. We knew that the sheriff's office was investigating and was basically in charge of the DNA component of the investigation since they're using their private lab, but that the FBI is really handling the ransom notes segment. So he didn't have much to add on the latest involving the ransom notes, but he did say that the FBI has done a number of arrests on fake ransom notes. I actually only know of one in California, but he said a number of arrests on fake ransom notes. And he said, quote, "I think we are looking at another one of those today, but we will let them do their work." And it seemed like he was referencing the TMZ notes when he said that. And I've told you guys, I'm always kind of trying to keep the TMZ notes separate from the first 2 notes that arrived that we know the FBI is taking seriously and that Savannah Guthrie tends to believe are real. That was the first note with the actual ransom that I'm told had information in it, about where Nancy Guthrie's Apple Watch was inside her bedroom, and also a broken floodlight that made it seem legit, the first note. And then the second note that came later, really within a week, that said that Nancy Guthrie was dead. So I've always kept those 2 notes separate from the TMZ notes. And it sounds like, based on what the sheriff said in this radio interview, that they also believe the TMZ notes are not real. And again, his exact quote was, "I think we are looking at another one of those today, but we will let them do their work." And he was referring to fake ransom notes that the FBI has investigated. So I thought that was interesting. He talked about the FBI task force. And I told you guys about this before, but basically, there are people who are assigned to the Nancy Guthrie case full-time, FBI agents, and then also people from the Pima County Sheriff's Office, detectives, and they meet at the FBI office in Tucson every day. And this is their full-time job, working the Guthrie case. He said that there's a team of 10 to 20 people who meet with the task force, and that's just the Pima County Sheriff's Office component, 10 to 20 people, which is actually more than what I've heard in the past. I've heard like 6 or 7 people. So he's saying 10 to 20 people. So it's still quite a big group of people working the Guthrie case, which is reassuring. And they meet at the FBI office away from the sheriff's office. So that was kind of interesting to hear him talk about. I want to get to my interview now, though, with Dr. Gary Brucato, again, forensic psychologist, criminal profiler. I've been waiting a couple of days to talk to him about these new notes because, again, he's so good at sort of pulling information out of notes, getting into the mind of a criminal. And he's very, very skeptical of the notes, of all the notes, including the first 2 notes. And he's going to explain why. I want you guys to hear my conversation with Dr. Brucato. Dr. Brucato, thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. It's nice to see you. Last time I saw you was in person when we did the CW special, but it's always good to catch up with you. I'm really interested to get your take on some of these new developments, specifically with the notes. And I kind of wanted to go about it because I think there's obviously a possibility that the notes are not real, but I think there's a possibility that the notes are real. We just don't know. And that's probably what the FBI is thinking. And Savannah has said that she thinks the notes are real. So I wanted to start by kind of just assuming the notes are real with some of my questioning, and see what you make of some of the language. And start with and I'm not talking about the TMZ notes here. I want to talk about the two notes.
And me personally, I never thought any of these notes were real. The only thing that gave me pause, and I should go back and listen to this again, is what Nancy Grace said about that second note. She was talking about the pajamas that Nancy Guthrie was wearing. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but she made it seem like they were correct about the pajamas she wore. And maybe Nancy Grace was presuming that's why the Guthrie family thought it was real. But maybe what I misunderstood was they didn't confirm that, maybe. Maybe that was more speculation and I just missed it. But does anyone know for sure about that? I remember we watched it, but I got sidetracked and I don't remember exactly what she said. But here's what I would say. If that's not true, and they didn't know what her pajamas were, then I would go back to thinking, no, these notes were probably just fake. These notes were just opportunistic exploiters to try to just exploit the situation, extort people is what I would have thought. But what do you think? And what do you think about what Nancy Grace said the other day about the pajamas?
That went to the local TV station that seem like the ones that the FBI are the most interested in. And with the first note, the "Hello, Savannah, we have your mother, Nancy," and that was the actual ransom note with the money demand. What do you make of that, especially the "Hello, Savannah"?
Well, it struck me as peculiar that it was addressed to only one of the siblings, suggesting that perhaps whoever did this thought that would be the primary source of the money, or that perhaps unconsciously revealing that there was a secondary motive, which was some sort of interpersonal dynamic that had to do with her. Remember that this is an individual, Savannah, this poor woman is walking around, I think, sort of feeling partially responsible in a sense that she might have been the reason her mother was targeted. And whoever wrote this note doesn't seem to mind her walking around thinking that, which suggests a cruelty toward her, in addition to whatever the financial motive is here. So that I think that there's something about this that suggests someone singling her out either for a practical reason, which is financial, or an emotional reason, which is that they have some knowledge of her family, some personal feeling about her, some animosity.
Yeah, and if the reporting is true, I mean, "Hello, Savannah, we have your mother, Nancy." Mm-hmm. To me, it strikes me as kind of a weird way of putting it. Like, we have your mother, Nancy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, the word "we" is interesting because if it is true, it settles the question of whether this was a cabal of people or one individual. The problem I have is that I'm always operating within the framework of having concluded that there is a very good possibility this entire thing was designed to give the impression of an abduction when it wasn't one. Or it was an abduction attempt that went very south. If this was a traditional abduction, there would be proof of life given with the...
Oh, Charity, Shadow and I are very sorry to hear that, Charity. My baby was only 2. Unexpected. My heart is shattered still. So which one? Let me read the comments here, what it said. With the doggy. Yeah, doggies are part of the family. So Shadow and I are very sorry to hear that, Charity. But also, Dr. Brucato here saying something interesting about wanting it to look like an abduction. And I was going to disagree with him at first. And then when he continues, he's going to say, because if it was a hit, they'd want it to look like an abduction. And I would say, okay, that makes more sense to me. I could see them doing that. I've never been one to think that this whole scene was staged. I think that would just give them more opportunities to get caught, is what I would think. Would they go out of their way to stage a scene and risk leaving DNA behind? That doesn't seem very wise to me.
With the letter, usually you're looking at 24 to 48-hour window of sending a note and wanting, especially an elderly victim, an elderly target, out of your hands very quickly, because there is the possibility that they won't survive or they'll develop a medical problem or other things. So you treat them very gingerly and carefully and so forth, and you want them back to the, otherwise you would lose the money. And so it's strange that there's no proof of life, which makes me think that at the time that letter was written, she was already perhaps not with us, and the person was attempting to capitalize anyway, to get the money anyway.
Is it possible the abductor is younger? Because you would think an older person would realize that they were dealing with an elderly person, maybe would have more of a understanding of that this person was fragile, that this may not go the way you planned, that what health issues are like. I personally think about that more now at this stage of my life with my parents getting older, whereas when I was younger, I don't really remember thinking that way. Could that indicate that the abductor is younger versus older?
My sense is that what it indicates is that the abductor or abductors lack the imagination that is associated with empathy, so that the individual cannot feel what is going to happen to an individual, how a person might react, etc. So I think is that lack of compassion and that lack of empathy can become a problem for some people who are planning a crime, because they lack that interpersonal imagination. And as I've said from the beginning, Porch Guy shows such a coolness under pressure that I thought this is probably somebody with some sociopathic quality to them. And that's exactly the kind of individual.
I would agree with that. I would agree that anyone who's going to be willing to abduct or murder Nancy probably at the very least has some sociopathic tendencies, if not worse. That's what I would think. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And I think the sociopathic tendencies, not feeling fear in the same ways, that would explain why so many people think Porch Guy was drunk or high. They think, oh, they were just way too cool. They were smoking weed, or they were drunk, or they were on a pain pill. It's like, well, actually, they might just be a sociopath or a psychopath. And maybe that could explain the same thing.
Who would not think through the human reaction that a victim would have. It can also indicate that whoever is behind the curtain, because I still believe there's a chef and a waiter, whoever is behind the curtain has a great deal of animosity toward her and really didn't care about her very much. That the point was not to keep her safe to get the money. The point was harm, and everything went as it was supposed to go.
Absolutely agree with that. I think the point was harm. I think the point was a hit. I think if the point was money, they couldn't have blundered it anymore. And I think since they gotten away with it so far, even though Maureen did say she's 75% sure they're going to get Porch Guy soon, at least arrest him, I think this is what, 4 months later, almost 5 months later, and there's still really no sign of them outside of the Porsche cam. So I think they know what they're doing a little bit. And for them to blunder that much to do this for money and then get $0, that just doesn't add up to me. I mean, they didn't take anything from the house either, so it just doesn't add up. So I think they did what they wanted to do. And as we've talked about many times before, you come during the night because you want to take the person. You go during the day when you hope no one's home, when you actually want to rob the home. That's what I would say to that. And as far as the wrench attack crypto theories go, Nancy Guthrie is not a crypto holder. I would be 99.9% sure. I mean, how many 84-year-olds do you know that are holding Bitcoin in their freaking Bitcoin wallet or Coinbase? I would say it's got to be a very, very, very small fraction. I'm not saying impossible, but I'd say maybe billionaires. I mean, how old is Warren Buffett? But even Warren Buffett said he would never hold crypto, I think. But there's probably others that have some. To them, they could have $100,000 in it, and to them, that's just nothing. They would consider that nothing. They would consider that such a small fraction of their portfolio they wouldn't even count it. But for the most part, the average 84-year-old isn't going to have crypto like that to make a wrench attack worthwhile. So again, I think they did what they wanted to do. They caused harm, and it was a hit. What do you think, chat?
For her to be harmed. And so that is the other possibility we have to keep alive. I don't think that the people involved are young. It's very possible that we're dealing with middle-aged people, for example, or, but I think the key is whoever this is has had a long-term problem with interpersonal empathy.
And then what about the second note? The second note acknowledging that she died, saying that it wasn't intentional. Why would someone, and not asking for anything, why would someone do that?
There are several possibilities to depend upon what really went on here. One possibility, and perhaps I'm cynical about these things, but I don't think that the type of person who would be responsible for abducting an 84-year-old woman would write an apology note without it having a selfish motive. From a pragmatic perspective, I think it may have been trying to preempt the legal situation that could be coming down the pike. So the person is trying to say, just in case I get in trouble for this, this wasn't intentional. That's possibility one. Second possibility is that this is a phony cover story to hide the fact that it was really just a homicide and the accidental death was precisely what was planned the entire time. Another possibility.
And that makes sense to me, Laura, because the people who are already loaded, they are privy to the financial game. They know, and so they would be more likely. The people who are loaded, they have smart financial planners, and they go to the smartest folks, and they would say to them, oh yeah, you should put some money in Bitcoin, or you should put some money in Ethereum. So that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me. Now, would Nancy Guthrie do that? Maybe if a financial planner advised it, but probably she has money from Savannah, and she probably invested it in a relatively safe way. If I had to guess, probably not something volatile like crypto. That being said, not impossible. It's not impossible she did, but I would think maybe things like the S&P 500, the Dow, things like that.
Is you're dealing with multiple psychologies. You have one person who's very cruel and didn't care, and another person who was sort of going along with it and was more emotionally attached to the victim and feels compelled to reach out and say, I'm sorry, and so forth. Another possibility is that you have someone who this individual doesn't have the same degree of lack of empathy and is trying to distance themselves emotionally from guilt or some other kind of thing. But you really run the gamut in terms of possibilities. One thing that struck me was that as a psychologist, I became compelled that the second note at least was probably written by a female. I think that is an interesting thing to think about. And I want you to know I'm not the only person who says that. I've heard it in the news that other people are suggesting that.
It was the sensitivity.
It's the sensitivity and the language. The language is almost poetic. It's peculiar, and that is not how people write notes. That came up with the.
So do you guys think the second note there was written by a woman because of the sensitivity and the poetic nature of it? Again, I don't think I've ever seen the entire note, so I don't know where they're pulling this from. As far as I know, they've only gotten bits and pieces of the note, right? I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've seen so far. But by the way, Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. We've gone back to spanking the like button. So we're politically incorrect here. We can't stray too far from our roots. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Leave your DNA of choice in the like button. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here. We have an amazing and awesome community, a very supportive and encouraging group. As always, the super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow of the Night Owl soy-free hoodie snacks. When you're a member, you get access to the members only live streams. I do them once a week. And then we can chill, talk about whatever you want, really. That's the time where I try to show my gratitude to the people that support the channel here and become a member. And usually I go live 5 or 6 nights a week. I try to go live at 10 p.m., but as Laura will tell you, I usually don't at 10 p.m. And she's not wrong. So I should say between 10 and 11, usually, because that's usually what it is. But Shadow and I are not very good at sticking to times anymore, as I'm sure I've all noticed so far. But again, thank you very much for all of the support that we've been getting so far. Shadow and I are very grateful.
The Ramsey case, that the question of whether, remember the people who thought for a little while that Patsy wrote it, whatever.
Laura. Laura, thank you so much for the super chat, Laura. She says tag you it because I'd sent her a super chat on her stream today. But make sure you check out Anxiety Art Adventures if you're into crafts and things. Laura always wants me to make sure I put that disclaimer there. But she's got a great group of folks there. And Shadow and I are always very appreciative, Laura. And we appreciate the fact that Laura is here to mod as well. The same with Miss Kim, too. And Livin. And Livin's here today as well. So we appreciate all the support. So thank you so much, Laura. And Laura will definitely be happy to check out the Matt Murphy interview. I'll be uploading that tomorrow.
They analyze the language. Does it sound more like it's written by a female or a male? But I think it was an outsider. But the point is that they pay attention to things like that. The sensitivity and passivity in the language can be a giveaway. And I am inclined to think that the first note doesn't necessarily sound like it was written by a female. And what I'm sensing is a rupture between the people involved, which is what I hope brings the whole thing down.
The first one, I'm just hung up, and if it's true, the hello Savannah to me, I don't know why the hello, it just almost feels something about that just really stood out, almost like a horror movie, like hello Savannah. I don't know. That's not. I would never write a hello. So you know what I mean? I don't know why I'm stuck on that hello.
I know that, like, why have a salutation like that? You know,
salutation. Salutation reminds me of Charlotte's Web. Don't they say that word in Charlotte's Web? Or hello reminds me like, the hell is that guy's name? Lionel Richie? Hello? Is it me you're looking for? Not to be confused with Adele's Hello. How are you?
So, right, exactly. It feels too personal, friendly. But I'm telling you, I think there's something just too weird about the fact that the notes aren't directed to the entire family. I'm very struck by that. And the use of the word we, the acknowledging her passing and saying it was an accident, the whole thing feels like somebody trying very hard to distance themselves, whether it is emotionally or legally, from the entire thing, which is a good sign because it suggests somebody who wants this over with, wants to break from the other people involved, wants to. I almost feel like somebody should put a message out there and say, "We think you want to talk. We think that you are grieving. Come forward, cleanse your soul. Come to and tell." And because I think that's a window that can be used. And the language was also very peculiar, stilted, like you would see in somebody who was kind of poetically inclined, a writer, that kind of person. The language is not typical of an uneducated kind of sociopath or something like that, right? It looks more like the writing of somebody who has had some education and is a sensitive person. So that struck me as very weird too. And then, of course, there's a possibility the note isn't real at all. It's just some imposter that's trying to mess with the head of.
Laura just made a very good point, actually, that it could have just been a man using ChatGPT for one of these notes, honestly, because that actually probably would be a smart idea, right? It's going to be hard to trace a ChatGPT response that gives nothing away about your personality if you put it through ChatGPT. So I wonder if they even thought about that, but that would make sense to me. And honestly, everybody uses ChatGPT or Claude anymore. People come at me on Facebook sometimes. People are like, I put your response through ChatGPT and ChatGPT, blah, if I could talk, ChatGPT said, you should do this, you should do that. That was inconsistent. And I was like, oh my Lord. By using ChatGPT to get me.
of some poor person that is suffering. So I think we have to keep all those possibilities alive. But it is a weird note.
Two questions. First, the female thing. Where does that come from? What led you to think that?
It comes from the sensitivity in the note and the language use, the kind of passivity, sensitivity.
So Laura, I don't know if you just came up with that on your own, but I've never heard someone even offer that as a suggestion that they use ChatGPT or Claude. But I could definitely see it. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't they?
Activity and the poetic language are suggestive to me of a female writer. And I've analyzed writings by many offenders, and female writers have a very different tone.
So here's the thing about that, though, too. Is there a way for the people that run ChatGPT? What's it called? The people that run ChatGPT? It's not coming to me. But there's a big company that's in charge of it. I forget which. But are they able to like search through their database and say, was there anyone that asked about a ransom note? Or will there just be so many people doing that they would never be able to narrow it down? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
How they present things. This suggested, I mean, if you take the whole story together, porch guy against the person who wrote this note, it looks like you've got a male guy that's going to the door that's much more kind of unempathic and nasty and cool under pressure, and some more sensitive, emotional female figure. But it'd be interesting to see if that turns out to be accurate.
And when you said one possibility.
So here's how it went, Julie Reagan. So I made the post about Gracie the giraffe, and I had mentioned it's a breeding farm for exotic animals. And the animals that are bred, they can be sold to zoos or other private ranches. And at those private ranches, they can do hunting because exotic game is not natural wildlife. So then it's not protected under the same protections. It's seen as private property, exotic game in Texas. But people were so mad at the way I phrased it. They went back and looked at all the edits because I wanted to make sure I was accurate as possible. And they say, no, you did this, you did that. ChatGPT told me you were inconsistent by saying, because I said, it doesn't look like someone like Gracie would be hunted. And then I looked into it and I said, well, actually, it's not illegal. It's not illegal. It's considered private property. And as long as you have the owner's permission on their grounds, it's technically not illegal. So that means to me, if the price is right, they probably would. Why wouldn't they at that point? And I also learned there's all sorts of people that support big game hunting in Africa because they say it's good for the species and it's good for the community's pockets. And I would say, maybe. I would say debatable, but that is the argument for it. Shadow and I have never quite seen the appeal to big game hunting or exotic game hunting, but some people love it. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt, for example, that was his favorite frickin' thing. And he loved animals. A lot of America's conserved land is because of Teddy Roosevelt. But at the same time, he was an avid hunter. And he would go into Africa and he'd be the biggest big game hunter of all. Because for him, he was president so young that I think once you're at the top like that, he was like, well, what do I do? How do I feel alive? And I said, well, I'll feel alive by hunting elephants and lions and giraffes in Africa, apparently. But anyway, that's the story of someone using ChatGPT to call me out, which was because ChatGPT is slick. And I was like, well, ChatGPT is accusing me of being inconsistent, But both of the statements that I said were not in opposition to one another. They both could be true at the same time. But anyway, I'm sure you're bored about that.
Is it's one person who's more kind of like just nasty and uncaring, and then someone who has a little more empathy and wrote the note. Is that typical? I mean, when you see people team up to do bad things like this, is it usually like one of them is kind of a nicer one and one is the really mean one?
Well, usually what happens is when you have a person with a very strong personality that is manipulative or nasty or cruel, you can have the other individual who is pulled along with them out of fear or loyalty or love or something, some combination thereof, or financial dependency or whatever. And that individual can sometimes ultimately, when under pressure, crack and sort of reveal that they regret it a little more. And so, for example, when you are interviewing people that are accused of a crime and there's been a pairing of people, it's always good to isolate them and talk to the one who may be the more sensitive one, because you could sometimes get them to reveal that they've been abused or are frightened or felt pressured or whatever, and they'll throw the other individual under the bus. I ultimately think that even though everybody's looking at technology and DNA and everything, one of the things that may end this case is that one of the people, and what I'm convinced is a group effort, will ultimately talk, because it's. I think that there is this constant drumbeat. It's very hard to keep something hidden like that. I think these are people that are local. So you got the whole thing kind of going on all the time, and you get a little bit of a kind of, like, if you remember the Edgar Allan Poe story, The Black Cat. After a little while, the pressure builds, and you just give in. And I think I can't help but think that somebody in this story, or if it's as simple as I don't want to get in legal trouble as much, and I'll talk, But fascinating, no one's taken the reward.
If the notes are real, I feel like
I agree with you, Laura. I don't think they're going to talk either, by the way. I agree with that. And I think it is they. I do think it's more than one person. I don't know exactly how many, but I do think it's more than one. I also think it's possible one of them or more might be dead. I think that might be possible too. But they've gone this far without talking. Why would they talk now? Why would they start squealing like a canary now? I mean, that just doesn't really add up to me. Why would they do that? Like, are they feeling pressured that they're going to get caught soon? I don't. Not that I know of. I mean, surely the FBI task force knows a lot more than they're telling us, but even so, I don't get the impression they're close. The only thing that gave me the impression they were close is what Maureen said. Maureen said 75% that they're going to get the porch guy soon. Now, what she's basing that on is what her sources told her. And I don't think her sources are lying. But from the outside looking in, I don't know what they're looking at. I don't know what's giving them that impression. But I guess we'll have to see. We will have to see. But I agree with Laura. I don't think they're going to talk.
Last week would have been, there would have been a lot of pressure on the people involved, specifically because it just felt different. The fact that we heard about what was in the notes and all the discussion has now been about who wrote those notes. Like, if you're one of those people that was involved and you think it was multiple people, it's just interesting to think about their frame of mind over the last week or two.
Absolutely. And I think that whoever we see on the camera, porch guy, was really just a kind of goon or confederate that was used to give the impression of someone who had no knowledge of Nancy beyond sort of studying her or trying to steal from her or something like that. You need some sort of goon to do that, because I think whoever is behind this has some degree of knowledge of her. They've worked with her, they've been around her, they know her intimately, something like that. So that you have to go out and get someone to give the impression of an outsider. That person has no stake in this other than some kind of gig. And that person, if caught, I think would rat out whoever's behind the curtain. But I think that, yes, the whole thing creates a pressure. It's like a pressure cooker process. Sometimes authorities do that on purpose, and you create a constant drumbeat. until somebody finally cracks. Because it does appear to me, with the experience that I've had, that somebody in this story is a little bit more emotional and feels something about her, and someone else doesn't.
Mm. And I guess if the notes are totally not real, then the person who really
All of the
did this
story.
is sitting there thinking right now, like, oh my gosh, I've got all
We're all
these people.
fools.
Yeah.
Yes. And that person, if that's true, that's an individual that simply is attention hungry and sort of sadistic, and is amused by the power of getting everybody to talk about this and all that. That may turn out to be the case with Mexico. Whoever made the tip about Mexico, if that isn't true, then what kind of person would do such a thing? Of course, you have to raise the question: is there somebody out there throwing out red herrings on purpose?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of different things going on, and this is just my gut
Mm-hmm.
feeling. My
Yeah.
gut feeling is that these TMZ notes are not real. The ones
Mm-hmm.
that the Mexico note is probably not, or the Mexico phone call, anonymous phone calls are probably not real, but that the first two notes could be real because, first of all, the first one came so quickly after this all started. Had specific information about where Nancy's iWatch was in the Apple Watch was in the room, and the damaged floodlight. Which, yes, you could have figured that out. There's probably a way you could have made that up, but again, I just think that gives it some legitimacy. And then the fact that the second note where it said she was dead came from I forget how they worded it. It wasn't the same IP address, but it was a similar server, encrypted server. Those first two notes, for that reason, I have more interest in.
Yes. Well, see, the trouble is that, and this has been true, ever since at least Victorian times, when a case gets a very great amount of press, it brings out another motive in a different type of person, which is that you can sort of ride the coattails of a person who has actually committed a crime. Think, for example, of the infamous Zodiac killer, who was almost certainly taking credit for crimes that other people committed because all he wanted was the attention. It wasn't even necessary to commit the crime at that point. You read something in the paper, took credit for it in a letter, and next thing you know, it's a Zodiac crime. And so I think that it also can bring out that type of egotistical individual who just doesn't care that you're leading somebody astray. I'm inclined to agree with you that the most impressive of the notes are the ones that you mentioned. My guess is that they authenticated the second one because it came from some source that was similar to the one that they're comfortable contains personal information. Information about the what was on the scene. But we'll see.
You've been saying since I first started talking to you, when this all started, that you thought, or at least you were bringing up statistics, and you had this feeling that it was someone who knew Nancy, not necessarily someone close, but some sort of connection, knew of Nancy somehow.
Yeah.
But as more time goes on, and there's so many people working on this case, and you've got the FBI, and you've got President Trump caring about it, and there's so much pressure to solve it. I guess I would just think if it was within her orbit, wouldn't they have found that person by now, or at least be on to someone?
We don't know that they don't have their eye on someone. It is entirely possible that you have your eye on someone, but you don't have enough to pin the individual. But the thing is, it's very, very difficult in 2026 to not slip up and leave some kind of a trail. And my guess is that there is a theory of what went on, but it's very difficult to pin it on whoever it is that you have in mind. I find it hard to believe that there's absolutely nobody in mind at all. And I think that the reason that you are forced into thinking about the possibility of somebody around her, whether it's a passing connection or an intimate one, is really that what you see in this crime is something that comes up in crimes where people who know you try to give the impression of an outsider, but they do a bad job of it. We saw that certainly in the Murdoch case, for example, and some other cases that come to mind. And the problem is that unsophisticated people who think they're very intelligent and brilliant and outsmarting everybody, they don't understand that if an outsider is going to come in and target you, it's going to be to rob you or to commit a sexual assault, almost certainly. right? And so the question is, where's the financial element and where's the sexual element? There's neither of them is there. You have some whiff of a financial element in the demands for ransom, but I mean, they didn't really take the time to keep the victim alive to get that money. So it's just, I'm impressed more by the idea that somebody who had some knowledge of her, who knew her, did one of two things. They either wanted to abduct her to get someone to put money into Bitcoin for one reason or another. Either a debt was owed or they wanted the money to run off with it or whatever. And it went south. She passed away accidentally, which would be consistent with the second note. And I think there would have been some struggle that led to that, because she's bleeding and something happened, either a struggle or she had a medical event. Second possibility is the entire thing is faked. It was intended as a homicide and to conceal the identity of those involved. A goon was used to look like an outsider, a stranger, and it was made to look like the person came in and took her for some financial reason that didn't work out. And both of those are not totally original things. They've happened all across the annals of crime, but we don't know what this is yet, so looks original.
It does seem that if you were going to ask for a ransom when she was alive, why not still try to get some money when she's dead? And especially when Savannah made that video saying we will pay even after she knew that the note said she died.
My guess is that whoever is responsible knows that if the money was put there and they went to take it, it would be too obvious to the people around them who did it. So as a consequence, you can't collect it. What's the point? It must be that whoever it is that is in that area, I'm sure, knows it wouldn't be possible to retrieve it in a way that wouldn't lead to capture. See, what I think is whoever did this has a feeling, because I think they're very selfish, is ultimately feeling, woe is me, I wound up empty-handed here. Things didn't go the way they were supposed to go. And now on top of it, I have to be in hiding. So that what you have is a person who failed at every level in the situation. And if it's true that there's someone else in the picture who's a little bit more sympathetic, that individual could be driven by that sense of pointlessness into also feeling a terrible sense of remorse and now wanting to kind of apologize and show guilt or just distance themselves from it. I'm not responsible, ultimately. So I think good thing about people who want to distance themselves is that if they're in a cabal, that's exactly the kind of person you could turn. Because you could say, okay, legally, we'll sort of, give you a little immunity here if you rat out everyone else, that kind of thing, because they don't want to be seen as responsible. So I think it's somewhere like that. But let me be clear, knowing her could just be someone who worked at the house, someone who's a friend of the family, someone who, that kind of thing, a local in that way. So we have to be sensitive to not,
Yeah, no, I guess. Right, of course. When you talk about like someone who's removed and then maybe there's guilt, like and we talked about like now that all this information has come out about the notes, should the FBI be releasing more little bits and pieces? Like, is this a good thing? When you get in the mind of a criminal, I mean, is creating this sort of pressure and it all being back in the public eye again and everybody's talking about it again. Is that a good thing for moving the investigation along and the possibility of getting someone to talk?
Yeah, that's a good question by Brian. I mean, at this point, the only thing I guess maybe it does is it keeps people's eyes open so that they might be looking for something suspicious, maybe. And as long as it's being talked about, it's on the forefront of their mind. But that being said, it was on the forefront of a lot of people's mind for 4 months. And who knows if anything good came out of it. I think they gave the FBI task force a lot of work. And the 4 people from the homicide unit in Pima County, it gave them a lot of work. But how much of it was fruitful? That's a different story. But also, again, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. We have an awesome group here. And thank you very much for all of the support I've gotten so far. And the super chat, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting memberships, they're great ways to support the channel. And they help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl here's soy-free Hootie snacks. And speaking of Shadow the Night Owl, the other night I was seeing some bats on my midnight stroll. Or when I say midnight stroll, it's really more like a 2 a.m. stroll, if not later. And there was 3 or 4 of them swooping around this street light. And what they were doing, I guess, is eating bugs. But it was so quiet that you can hear their wings flapping as they swooped by. It was kind of like a fighter pilot in World War II swooping through. I took video of it. It's pretty interesting. I like nature.
Well, keeping a case in the media and having people constantly look at something, can help, because you've got people out there, keeping their eyes on things constantly, or even in politics, or people up there, who are looking at it and paying attention to it and feel a pressure. These are all good things. The problem is that if there is a secondary motive of, let's say, jealousy of the fame of Savannah, or somebody angry at her for her fame or her notoriety, somebody who's, bitter, whatever. If you've got something like that going on, it's complicated, because this has the secondary effect of feeding the beast, that it bloats the ego, it draws attention. So there is that possibility. If you've got an outsider or person who is just being manipulative and sadistic, it feeds that beast too. So, but this is the nature of it. I think that if the sense is, if they've talked behind the curtains, to some expert from behavioral science or something, the person might say to them, look, there might be somebody involved here that could keep the drum beat. That's entirely possible. There are cases where you do that. The drum beat is helpful, because the more it's buzzing in a person's ear, the harder it is to keep from snapping and saying, look, I can't take it anymore. This is what happened. Let's get it over with. You're coming for me anyway. That's my best bet. That kind of thing. So we don't know if it's a technique, or if it's just that it's an interesting story and the news is keeping it alive, and it's having side effects. It's impossible to say.
Is feeding the beast a good thing, though? Like, I get the person who might feel a little guilt and this would just make them crazy. I finally want to tell what happened. But in terms of the bad person, if is feeding their beast good in a way? Does that also increase the chances that they might try to talk or act out or send another note or something?
I think it would keep them, if they are driven by ego, they would keep sending notes. But what I envisioned was that you have more than one person, and one person sent that apology note and the other one said, what's wrong with you? Why did you do that? I cannot envision that being a group decision, unless it was part of a concealment process and the whole thing's a fib. Like, let's make it look like this was an accident kind of a thing. But it feels to me more like somebody might have felt something and broken off and sent it, and the other people might not have thought that was the best idea. But because we're not seeing a constant process of sending notes. As far as I know, this source didn't send any more since months ago. If they were going to feel that pressure and do it, it would have happened already, I think, at this point. What's the distance in time between the two that you're compelled are real?
4 to 5 days.
I think that source is probably dried up, unless news reporting drives them into a state of feeling the need. But I think they're laying low.
And you said something else earlier. You still believe it's a local?
Yes. The familiarity, a simple example, is that probably the driving route, because I cannot envision a world in which she was not taken in a vehicle and the blood droplets go right up to the driveway and everything. I think that wherever that vehicle went, it seems clear that they had an intimate knowledge of where cameras and things would be that would be picking the vehicle up. At the very least, somebody did an amazing job scoping, but I think that takes comfort, familiarity with the area. So yes, I do think that it's locals, and I think whoever Porch Guy is, has probably been on the radar of local law enforcement before. May even be in jail now, but has definitely been on the radar. And that's why I think they need to be going to the jails and circulating the video footage, because, as I said on the last time I appeared with you, even with a mask on, like, the gait is so specific. Like, if I put a mask on and was walking, you'd recognize me, or vice versa, right? So I think that somebody would be like, yeah, I know who that is. And I think if you're looking for that kind of person, usually you're going to go to the jails or the underworld or whatever of the area, and somebody's going to recognize them. I don't think they recruited the person from very far away to do that.
And just lastly, because I kind of had you go both ways, is your gut that, and I'm just going to talk about the first two notes, is your gut that those are real, or do you think that they're, I guess there's a difference between them being real and they could be real, but the person is just not telling the truth. I mean, where's your gut at on that?
My gut is that the people involved probably really did send the first one and this second one, but all the other ones I'm not necessarily compelled are real. I don't see any reason to believe they are.
So Dr. Gary thinks the first two are real, but none of the other ones are. So my follow-up question would be, so Dr. Gary, what about the first two make you think that they're real? Is there something to do with the pajamas? Is it something else? Is it the fact that the Guthrie family thought they were real? But what is it for you? Hopefully Brian asked that question.
And that sounds like I'm on the same page and you're on the same page. It sounds like with what Savannah believes about them, that those two seem to be the standout ones that are believable. You know, I just think.
And what makes them believable, though? Why are they believable?
At this point, if you're believing that note, it must be so heartbreaking for Savannah, first of all, to have the notes directed only to her. And then to secondly have this feeling that whoever sent this note knows where she is now and won't give her to you. What's the point of apologizing and saying you're sorry and then not having the decency to say, and this is where she is? That's why I'm inclined to think.
Decency? I mean, anyone who's involved in this, do you think they're going to have any decency? Nah, decency is not in their vocabulary. If decency was in their vocabulary, they wouldn't be abducting / killing Nancy Guthrie, right? I mean, a lot of people think, oh, why the decency this, decency that. It's like, no, sociopaths, psychopaths, or serial killers, decency is not in their vernacular. That doesn't matter. They might try to appear like that in certain cases, but I wouldn't expect them to have any decency. I mean, do you expect someone who has more than likely killed your mother to have decency? I'd say that's the wrong place to be looking for decency.
That it was not so much sensitivity as protecting one's butt, covering one's butt legally or something, because why are you not leading people to where she is? To give closure, if that's really so. That's why I'm holding in mind a bunch of hypotheses, but I lean in the direction of it being a pragmatic and selfish deed, because you would give closure to the family if you really were concerned. You'd say where she was.
Really, really appreciate Dr. Brucato for taking the time to talk with me. He's always so interesting to talk to. You guys might remember.
Yeah, and Snoop, mostly it is the cattle and the deer that get hunted on the private ranches there, the exotic game. But it's not illegal. It's not illegal for the giraffes to be, if they're bought by a private owner and the private owner gives permission, that's allowed. And it's allowed because since giraffe are not a native species, they don't have to play by the rules of what natural wildlife would be and the hunting around them. So even if something's quote unquote endangered, like they don't even have to play by those rules, I don't think either. The only rule would be if a private owner of a giraffe gives you permission to go on a little bit of a safari, and those big game safaris in Texas are absolutely a thing. So they do everything else: zebras, antelope, deer, bison, buffalo. So like, would you be surprised if occasionally a giraffe was thrown in there too? Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's probably rare, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Had him in my special that was on the CW when I did that roundtable of profilers. I think that was last month. So I'm always sort of fascinated by what he has to say. Something else I haven't been able to wrap my mind around is the Bitcoin component of this. And based on everything I've seen, I don't think this was a wrench attack. And I've done stories on that in the past. But I'm still intrigued by the Bitcoin component. What that tells us about, if it is true, if the Bitcoin part is true and some of the ransom notes are real, what the Bitcoin component tells us about who may be behind this. Also, why can't the FBI track down who created that Bitcoin account? I don't get it. I mean, all that goes above my head. I don't know.
I know why it is, because until they actually send it to an address that's cashed out, you don't know who owns that address. The address is like a random BTC address in a wallet. That's anonymous. But what would happen is when you pass it through somewhere like Binance or Coinbase or Kraken, these are the exchanges. Then from there, they might be able to see, all right, they'll flag this address. They see money coming from this address that's flagged. But what the criminals would try to do is they're going to try to put that money into a privacy coin like Monero as fast as possible and disperse it amongst many accounts to try to make it as difficult to track as possible. It would be fascinating to me to see if they get away with it. I don't know if they would. They might. But so they can try to track it, but depending on how slick they are, they might get away with it. I'm not sure.
Ton about Bitcoin, but I've been wanting to understand it, and I have a really good guest. I've been trying to find the perfect guest for it, and I finally did. His name is Sean O'Connor. He's with the SANS Institute. He's a cybersecurity executive, been working on this stuff for literally decades. And I'm going to talk to him about, again, why is it so difficult for the FBI? You would think they have all the tools that they could, possible to figure this.
Because again, yet they would have to send it to an exchange for them to even notice it. Right now, it's just an address, and it's probably an address of just an individual wallet, not on an exchange, is probably what it is. And not until it hits an exchange will anyone be notified. So exchanges now, they require you to do KYA or KYC, know your customer, like KYC. So that would be their one chance to get them. They send it to an exchange to exchange it for other altcoins and things. But at the same time, they could try to exchange it so many ways. They change it to Ethereum, and then they could hide it in other places. But the big thing would be cashing it out. Can they get it to be cashed out? So they would probably swap it to other things, and then they would try to see if they can cash it out. Or maybe they would just hold it for a while. And if they felt like it was safe, then maybe hold on to it for a little while. And then when no one's looking, boom, try to do it. I don't know. So I didn't mean to make Brian look silly.
Out. And again, also, does this mean like this is a younger person behind this? I mean, who actually would be using Bitcoin in a ransom attempt? So this is my conversation with Sean. Hey, Sean, thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate you taking the time. I was really interested in talking to you because I've been covering the Nancy Guthrie case since this all started. And one thing I've been confused by is sort of the Bitcoin element. I don't know a ton about Bitcoin. I kind of just know the basics.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that with all the capabilities of the FBI, they haven't been able to track, I guess, I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it, but who created that Bitcoin account that was referenced in the ransom notes?
Yeah, Brian, thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it. So first off, the thing about Bitcoin, it's not anonymous. A lot of people will make that common mistake. It's pseudonymous, and it's really one of the most transparent systems that has ever been built. Every transaction is public. It's immutable.
So that's true, but it's a public blockchain. But that doesn't mean you know who owns each address. That's a different story.
It's permanent. And the thing about tracing, right? Like a lot of people ask the question, like, why can't they trace the Bitcoin? Why can't they trace this? Tracing follows movement, right? And that $152 that they sent initially hasn't moved anywhere. which is actually a common technique that law enforcement will use. $152 is actually a higher amount, but it's something called a dusting attack, where law enforcement will send a very small amount of funds to try and get the criminal to move those funds paired with other transaction activity so they can then effectively trace it. And that's what I believe was the technique that they were using, that they employed here. But again, it hasn't moved anywhere. It's exactly where the FBI initially sent it. So in this case, the trail hasn't gone cold. It just never started. And with like, you mentioned with all the capabilities and everything that law enforcement has, I mean,
So what he's saying here because I'm very familiar with crypto. So what he's saying is, as it's just sitting in a wallet, they don't know whose wallet that is. But if they were to try to send it to another address, then they can see that movement on the blockchain. And then it would just be a matter of, would they be able to catch whoever it was before they started exchanging it for other things? Now, some of that would come down to where they send it. Now, has law enforcement notified every possible place they could send it to red flag that address? I don't know. Maybe. But if they tried to do that and red flag that address, they can see who that money is going to. And if they did KYC in that place, they can see the person that was trying to receive it. Maybe.
Been so many more advanced cases than this. I mean, when you think of money laundering techniques and money laundering process, traditional money laundering, and this applies to blockchain ecosystems as well. You've got placement, layering, and integration of funds. And placement is kind of that initial stolen funds or ransom funds. It's the part where the criminal has obtained funds illicitly. And then layering, this is kind of where you think of money laundering techniques. You've got things like peel chaining activity, where they're sending small amounts of funds to thousands of different addresses. And if this is done programmatically, it could be millions of different addresses and just very small transactions to try and break the trail. Or you've got things like chain hopping, where they're going.
So he's explaining how they would try to get away with it. They have these programs where they can send it in small amounts to many different addresses that make it very difficult to track.
From a Bitcoin blockchain to something like a privacy enhanced blockchain like Monero, which makes it extremely difficult to trace unless if you have off-chain information or intelligence that you can kind of pair with it, or just traditional mixing, decentralized mixing like coin joins. There's all kinds of really advanced obfuscation and layering techniques that these bad actors will use. But even in these more advanced cases, law enforcement was still able to trace those funds to an exchange that collects KYC or know your customer data, and then eventually ID the criminal responsible. But that's not the case here.
This guy, I could have been this guy. He's talking just like I was.
Because there's no trail to follow, right? All they have are some addresses. And so there's wallet fingerprinting techniques, like, where you can ID what kind of wallet they're using. But typically that requires some transactional activity. And if I were to guess, and I'm just speculating from the outside here, Brian, is that they're using like a burner wallet, or a wallet that they created solely for the purpose of this criminal activity, where it has no transaction activity whatsoever, no funds that have ever been sent to that wallet, and then no funds that wallet has ever sent funds to. And that is how law enforcement is able to take little bits and pieces of evidence to tie and fingerprint what type of wallet it is, maybe what exchange it's associated with. Sometimes you'll see things like vanity addresses. That's just an address where it looks like a name at the beginning of the address, instead of like the BC1Q or BC1P or your traditional 1 or 3 type addresses that you'll see with Bitcoin. And then those will give you clues with the vanity address, kind of what exchange that they were using. But this just looks like a clean burner wallet where they've only ever used it for this sole purpose. So there's really no clues for law enforcement to go after.
Does this mean, when you say burner wallet and the way this was set up, does this indicate that the person is somewhat sophisticated when it comes to Bitcoin, or no?
You can't know that for sure. You would know how they tried to disperse it, though, then you would know how sophisticated they are. But the addresses they have already set up, the exploiters, they don't know who they are yet because nothing's come to them yet. Once they've come to them, then maybe they'd be able to see it depending on where those addresses are, if that makes sense. But again, I don't think it's a slam dunk. I don't think it's a slam dunk that they'd get caught so easily. Yes, they can be tracked. Yes, it's a public blockchain. But my question would be, once it goes to an address, is it going to be instantly frozen? Because if it's instantly frozen, then they wouldn't be able to do anything.
No, not necessarily. Like a lot of people will suggest that because, well, why haven't they moved the funds and how come law enforcement can't trace it? It's just, they're just smart enough to know that $170 something is not worth them sending to, an exchange, which could potentially lead to their demise, lead to them getting ID'd. If it was a larger sum, maybe they would move it. And then again, in some more advanced cases, a lot of times what sophisticated adversaries will do, like North Korea, is they'll wait for, like right now, crypto's down, right? Like Bitcoin is probably about half the price of where it was about a year ago. And so sometimes they'll just sit and wait for it to appreciate. And then once it gets to a certain point, they'll start moving funds then. So I don't think that's the case in this example, just because the funds are so small. But sometimes that is what an adversary will do. They'll wait for the right moment, and then they'll say, is it worth for me to move it now that Bitcoin is worth this much money or Ethereum is worth this much money?
What does it say to you, though, that, and this is if the ransom notes are real, that the person behind the Nancy Guthrie abduction is trying to use Bitcoin? I mean, does that profile a certain kind of person? And again, like you mentioned, the what did you call it? Like a stealth, like the way it may have been set up. What was the word you used?
What, like a burner wallet? Or
a burner wallet? Yeah, a burner wallet.
Techniques?
Yeah, is that indicative of someone like younger? Maybe I just think of like people older than me don't.
It's just someone crypto savvy. I mean, the age of crypto savvy people is like late teen into 40s or 50s generally. Possibly older, but that's basically what it would be. I would say like 18 to 60, 18 to 50s ish.
Seem to know about that stuff, but maybe that's just the profiling sort of.
No, I mean, there are older people who understand, how to use cryptocurrency. I mean, there's a number of cases I've worked on where there's been like 50-plus-year-old doctors from Venezuela who understood how to use cryptocurrency and ran an entire ransomware operation while they were also a doctor.
Wow.
So like you'll see some cases where the person that you would not expect at all is someone who understands this stuff. But I would say that you're not wrong in assuming that this could potentially kind of limit the number of types of people that this could be. You have to have some kind of an understanding of Bitcoin to be able to create a wallet, to understand that the address is how you and I communicate or transact, and then be able to provide that to the person to then send funds to you. So there is some level of understanding, but like nowadays, because cryptocurrency has been around for so long, I mean, and plus with Gen AI tools, I could just Google it and then it'll give me a step-by-step process with Gemini of how to set it up. So really anybody could do that.
And so you're saying basically the $160 some they put in, you think the person saw that and was just like, it's not worth
it. Yeah, it's not worth the risk. They're looking at it as calculated risk.
Yeah, it'd be foolish for them to send money only $150 and risk getting caught. Now, what's the calculus for the minimum amount you'd want to think it's worth trying? Now, some of them are only asking for 50,000 or so, which I think is pretty low considering the massive amount of risk. Especially if they actually did it. And the fact that they're only looking for such a low amount, that also makes me think, nah, it's probably just an exploiter. Because if you really did it, you're going to risk getting caught in a murder charge for 50 grand? That would be stupid. dumb, stupid. So the fact that they were only going to be asking for 50 grand, one Bitcoin, at this very moment, I'm like, why would you do that? Now, maybe an argument for it would be, well, in time, it'll go back up again. But even so, you're going to wait all that time and you're going to risk getting caught if you actually did it? I don't see it. I don't see it.
And they're saying, is this worth me going behind bars for the rest of my life potentially? And the answer to that is no. What can $170 something get you in this economy right now? Not a whole lot.
So is there any way to track just who's looking at the account? Like because obviously we know TMZ apparently has the address, but like is there any way for the FBI to just see who's looking at it?
As in like who?
As in, and again, I'm sorry, I don't.
No, they can't see who's looking at it. The only way they'd be able to see is if it got sent to another address.
Know much about Bitcoin, so I
forgive me. That's fine.
But like when you're saying they could look and see that the FBI put the $164 in, right? And then they're just deciding not to take it out. Is there any way for the FBI to figure out just who's looking at who knows that that's there, like who glanced and saw, who took a look in the account?
The only way that you could potentially do that is through internet tools where you're looking at things like if they have partnered sites with like blockchain explorer like companies, then or blockchain analytics firms like Chainalysis or TRM Labs. I mean, there's potential where you could do something like that, but it's not going
to me, that's a long shot. Maybe not impossible to look at a blockchain explorer to see who's looking at things and who has eyeballs, but that's a long shot.
To give you a name or anything. It's going to give you other pseudonymous identifiers, likely a lot of different IP addresses. And a lot of those IP addresses are probably going to be associated with people at TMZ and anybody else who has access to what address or addresses are associated with this case. So, you're going to have to do a lot of filtering out of all of the different IP addresses that are associated with law enforcement, with news agencies, with whoever else has that address. And plus a lot of information will sometimes spill or leak out. So then you also have other people who may have that address, not even associated with this case, that, somebody provided to them maybe from TMZ or somebody else who let that information leak out. And so, the information may not be, credible, even if they were able to obtain that information.
So really they need to take the money out in order for them to be tracked.
You need those funds to move. Yeah, exactly.
Do you think, and there's been some debate whether, because it sounds like everything we're hearing is that the FBI advised Savannah not to pay the money. There was no proof of life. I guess there just wasn't enough meat on the bones for them to justify. But at the end of the day, from what the FBI people I've talked to, it's her decision. It's their decision at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Do you think that they should have advised her to pay because the temptation then would have been there because it's so much money if it was $1 million or $4 million or whatever?
I think if you put a minimum, it would have to probably be at least 200,000 for them to risk it, I think. Maybe a little bit less, but I would say at least 200,000. That's enough for them to try. And at that rate, then you can see. And then maybe you can go through the process and then you would see pretty quickly, okay, is this person someone that we think was involved? Or is this just an opportunistic exploiter? Which one is it? And I mean, I don't know. If she's not alive, how much are you willing to pay to discover the body? It's kind of a gruesome question, right? But how much would you? I mean, a live person, that's worth so much more. Right? You think someone's alive, you spend $1 million, $2 million in a blink because they're alive. But if they're not alive, I don't know. I mean, how much would you spend to find them? Now, granted, for someone like Savannah, they have money, so it's not really that much of an obstacle. I think her net worth is around 50 million. So what would you do if you're looking for someone's body of a loved one and you think they're dead? How much would you spend for it?
Or that the person would have pulled it out?
It's really not my place to say. I wasn't in the room when that decision was being made. I don't have all of the evidence to be able to make an educated guess about what was the right, decision in those scenarios. Working with law enforcement in previous cases and just my understanding of their capabilities and handle on this case among other cases, I just have to believe that they used the right judgment based on all of the information that they had at that time.
Do they, based on the other cases you've worked like with the feds and stuff and law enforcement, do they have a pretty good handle when it comes to investigating like cases involving Bitcoin?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you could look at, just look at FBI's partnership with IRS-CI. So IRS has a criminal investigations division who specialize in cryptocurrency tracing, and FBI is very good at cryptocurrency tracing as well. And a lot of the people who work those cases go on to work for companies like Coinbase and TRM Labs and Chainalysis and very, very advanced like cryptocurrency tracing and analytics type companies, where they're looking at things like this every day: fraud cases, tax evasion through crypto, a lot of different type of activity. But they are extremely capable when it comes to that. They have access to tools that a lot of people do not have visibility into. Very expensive tools that have what we call on-chain intelligence, things where you may see one address, right? But that address can be clustered with potentially 10 or 100 or thousands of other addresses that have ever transacted with that. And then they cluster that together. And then once you get intel on one of those addresses that's clustered with the thousands of other addresses that are grouped together, you start to build a picture about the entity that controls that wallet or wallets that is controlled by one person or one entity or one criminal group. And some of the tools that I mentioned previously have that ability where you can look at it and it almost will label the criminal organization that's associated with that address, who they've transacted with, other criminal organizations that they've transacted with. Is this associated with money laundering? Is it associated with ransomware? Is it associated with CSAM activity? Like they've got a lot of abilities with
CSAM. You know what that is, don't you?
Within law enforcement. And I know for a fact that they're using a lot of those tools. It's one of the things that we teach in our course at SANS around cybercrime investigations. And we're teaching a lot of those law enforcement professionals how to use tools like that.
So if you're Savannah Guthrie and you obviously have quite a bit of money, would there be any benefit at some point if this goes unsolved to pay an outside company that specializes in cyber crimes and Bitcoin and stuff to try to do their own investigation? Or do you think like what the FBI has is pretty much the best?
Yeah. So I can tell you firsthand that FBI is working with those companies already. Anytime that there's a criminal or a cyber criminal case, any private company that has visibility that the FBI might not have, they've partnered with in previous cases before. So they may not be saying anything public about it, and they typically won't until the case has been solved. Because right now it's an open investigation, and they know that if they say anything publicly before the case is closed, then they're probably not going to get the opportunity to work with law enforcement again. But there's a lot of private companies out there that have unique telemetry, unique visibility into blockchain, into IP infrastructure, into a lot of different things that allow and help the FBI trace through, like IP tracing, email address tracing, blockchain tracing. There's specific companies out there, and I would name names, but like you can just Google blockchain tracing companies. You can Google IP address infrastructure tracing companies, and you'll figure it out for yourself. But there's a lot of private companies out there that assist and collaborate with law enforcement and other public sector agencies on cases like this. It's how we're able to take down transnational organized crime the way that we are able to do.
Interesting. Okay, so they're already probably working with the outside private companies. Yeah, we see that with the DNA too. Like in a lot of criminal cases that I investigate, they'll go. There's certain DNA labs that just have better technology, more specialized scientists than FBI has. So they'll pay those people to to work on cases. That makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
So it sounds like there wouldn't be a benefit right now to Savannah trying to hire someone to solve this on her own.
I don't think so. I think it would just add additional unnecessary noise. I promise you, they're looking at this from every which way, every different perspective, through their private sector partnerships, as well as within internal law enforcement agencies.
What do you think just sort of overall of the Bitcoin component to this? I mean, because we still don't know if the ransom notes are real. I mean,
Yeah.
They obviously have to take them seriously. And it seems like the TMZ ones are separate from the first two that arrived to the local TV station.
Yeah.
The first two seem like a little bit more,
Yeah,
I guess, credible.
Based on the timing, as well as some of the information that they provided in the note. I feel like some of the more recent ones have been a bit more opportunistic, and you see that even with cybercrime, where you get opportunistic actors who will try and capitalize on something that's popular or trending right now. They see one ransom note went through. Well, why not me? Why can't I create a ransom note similar to that one and then just give them a different address? So there's always going to be bad actors, criminals, fraudsters who are trying to capitalize on an opportunity whenever something is big or trending.
What's your sense with the first two, though, and the fact that they're using a Bitcoin? Like, does that make sense to you?
It really depends from case to case, from criminal to criminal. I mean, one Bitcoin could be a lot for one and could be worth the return on investment for the scale of this case.
It's not even to me about what coin it is. It's more even about, can they get away with it? Can they get away with exchanging it to other coins without being tracked and being caught? That's really the only question. So if you can't get away with it, it doesn't matter if it's $1,000 or $1 million, you're not going to get away with it. However, if you can get away with it, then that changes everything.
But but that points to a less sophisticated, criminal, if that is in fact legitimate. Just because, is that really worth something of this level of visibility and publicity? Like, you're more than likely going to get caught. And I don't think
you're talking about the TMZ ones that just wants one Bitcoin.
The one Bitcoin, yeah. I don't think the $60,000 is worth all of the publicity around this and the potential of you getting caught.
Yeah, I'm talking more about the first two, though, that they also want. Well, it was in the first letter that they asked for the millions. I mean,
yeah.
Does it make sense that
it's more credible? The amount they asked for, the timing of it, some of the information that they provided that was unique to, I believe it was the backyard or something.
Yeah, the floodlight and the position of Nancy Guthrie's Apple Watch in the bedroom.
Yep, exactly. I feel like that's more credible.
Okay. Yeah. One other big topic of discussion has been like wrench attacks, which I did an episode on, which it sounds like essentially are when someone comes to you and says, physically and says, like, open up all your,
wrench attack is when they attack someone physically, and it doesn't have to be with a wrench. It can be with anything. It could be a gunpoint. And they say, give us your seed password. Give us your seed phrase of whatever account you have. Or show us where your cold wallets are and give them to us with the seed phrase. That's what you would do. I mean, Shadow and I know how to do that. It'd be a very unscrupulous thing to do, by the way. And you'd probably go to jail for a long time if you did it, because you would have assault and battery with a special circumstance of financial gain. I should have asked Matt Murphy if an assault and battery can have a special circumstance. I know a murder can have a special circumstance, but can an assault and battery? I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
Bank accounts, and then has someone else on the phone who's like stealing all the stuff.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a possibility here? I mean, it's happened to elderly people before.
Yeah, no, that's there's a number of ways, and I can speculate on what could have potentially happened, but we do see an increase in wrench attacks. One of the reasons is because is it easier for you to try and break encryption of a private key for a wallet that you don't even have physical control over? Or is it easier to just go and physically go to that person and threaten them to give you the cryptocurrency that they have in that wallet. It's significantly easier. I mean, the risk is going to be higher, right? Because you have to physically go there, or you could pay, somebody to go there on your behalf. But that is something that has been increasing over the last couple of years.
Is it, I guess when I think of cyber crimes and Bitcoin, I just think of like everything being digital, like through the computer. But I mean, is it becoming more common for these things to actually turn like
enter
violent?
the physical world? Oh yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. So especially with different digital groups that have kind of emerged through like Scattered Spider and this group called the COM, or the community, COM for short, which is mostly a lot younger people like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, believe it or not, where we see things like swatting, where people are calling people, and this happened to Brian Krebs. He was a very, very popular cybercrime investigator, where bad actors sent heroin to his house, called local law enforcement, and tried to send SWAT team to his house. Luckily, Brian Krebs had a very good relationship with law enforcement. And then he also had a lot of presence using human intelligence, where he had personas, sock puppet accounts in those underground forums, where he was seeing that they were planning this, to where he then was able to call law enforcement and let them know, like, hey, this is probably going to happen to me. I have visibility that these bad actors are going to send heroin to my house. So like you see a lot of things like that. There's also, I can't remember all of the names of them, but there's one where you pay a service on a Telegram channel, and then somebody will come with a brick, throw it through your window, right, and apply pressure. Or sometimes they're just doing it for trolling or for the lulz, like for laughs. Like some of these people have, some mental health issues for sure. And it's just that there's a lot of different types of attacks now where you can pay for a service in the digital environment or the digital world, and then that translates to physical harm, in the physical world.
That's so scary. I mean, honestly, like it's as if I mean, you understand that all, but like, should we be freaked out about the future? I mean, like it sounds freaky.
Yeah. I mean, just like with any potential harm or threat, I mean, there's always going to be ways for us to stay vigilant and put preventative measures in place. And even just having this conversation right now, more people are going to be aware that these things exist and do their own research and learn enough for themselves to be able to find ways to ensure that they're protected, their loved ones are in a defensible, state.
There was one other thing I wanted to ask you about that I just remembered involving with the Nancy Guthrie case. So the two notes that came in initially that seemed like the most credible, they were submitted to the local TV station through like a form on their website. Like a lot of news stations will have a news tip form. So it's not actually an email, it's a form in the site where you just fill in the information and then you click submit. Which seems like it would be harder to trace, right, than just sending, I guess, an email directly from your account, like from a made-up account.
I mean, if it's a form on a website, I mean, that's very, very trackable.
It is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's all kinds of information. Like even when somebody visits, News Nation or visits TMZ and their website, that every website has some kind of tracker to be able to identify, what IP was associated with the person that submitted information through this form. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize is, especially with criminals, is they'll be using a virtual private network, a VPN, they'll be using Tor, they'll be using Tails, Cubes. There's a lot of different things that they can use out there to mask their real true IP address. So although they may have submitted this, through this form, there's potential that they were using something to mask their IP.
If they used a VPN or something to mask it, are there ways around that for the FBI?
It depends on the VPN. There's VPN providers out there like Molvad. I mean, like I'm sure you've heard of like Norton. Like that's one that's more common, and it's typically U.S. centric, right? If law enforcement has to trace something, they could probably go to Norton and they could probably get some information to figure out who that potentially is. It's not a guarantee, but there's potential there. But if they're using something like Molvad, which is a VPN that's very commonly used by criminals, for criminals, and it accepts cryptocurrency. So there's like not really any way for you to ID who's using that. Like with Norton, if I sign up with Norton, I need to give them my name, address, potentially phone number, email, all kinds of information. You use a service like Molvad. I mean, you don't need to give any of that. You can just pay them in crypto, and then now you have access to that VPN service. And then Tor doesn't require, anything. You just download Tor, and you've got the Tor network set up, and you're on the dark web. And now you can go to that site using Tor and then fill out that form, and your IP has been routed using the Tor network.
So it just depends which one they use. How sophisticated they were, if they knew which one was more secret.
Mm-hmm.
What's your general feeling, Sean, about this whole thing? I mean, like, is there anything I meant? Like, do you think that it's going to end up being that they catch this person through like cyber, like through figuring out the Bitcoin side of things, or do you think it's going to be something else?
More human.
Yeah.
I always like to say it takes both, right? And this.
I'll say this: if they don't send any crypto, there is zero chance the crypto way works. So unless money is sent more so than $150, and then it gets dispersed to another account, there is a 0% chance that's how they're going to get them. So until that happens, the DNA or maybe video somewhere from one of the other Nest cams or Ring cams and finding the vehicle they left in, that's what I'd be hanging my hat on. What else are we hanging our hat on? We're trying to do the genetic genealogy, right? But how's that going? Not that good. What about how come we have no idea what vehicle picked her up? It's still wild to me that we don't. But we don't. But maybe, just maybe, they can find some of that footage. And I would say you're more likely to catch someone from those methods than you are with the Bitcoin way. And again, you're not going to get anything at all if they never send anything to the Bitcoin account more than $152.
Goes back to so my background is in the intel community. I started out doing human, so I'm very pro human intelligence, and so like the CIA is typically associated with human intelligence, whereas the NSA is associated with signals intelligence, right? And both of these agencies think that their intelligence is the best, but the true fact of the matter is you need both, right? One provides you depth, right? Human intelligence provides you depth, more context, whereas signals intelligence, like digital evidence, provides you breadth. You get a whole lot of data, a whole lot of information, but it may be that somebody steps forward who saw something or knows someone, and then they provide that human intelligence to law enforcement, and then that human intelligence could potentially have something digital associated with it, and then they've got additional evidence that they can then take and then put that into kind of their digital evidence bucket, and then that breaks open the whole case, right? So it's not going to be either or, it's going to be a combination of both.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, I appreciate you helping me explain this,
Yeah, of
Sean.
course, Brian.
I know it's kind of complicated to us regular people, so appreciate your time.
Not at all. Thanks, Brian.
Right.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right.
Take care.
Really, really appreciate Sean for taking the time to talk with me. And I'm going to stay on the story. Obviously, there's been a lot of moving parts over the last week. You guys saw him on the road now. I'm actually not on the road right now when I'm taping this, but when this video comes out, I'll be on the road with Mo. We're working on our News Nation road trip. We're doing this big road trip leading up to the 4th of July. But I'm still staying on top of everything with Nancy Guthrie. I got a couple of other crime stories that I'm working on too this week that I'll keep you guys posted on. As always, really, really appreciate everybody for following, for subscribing, for just supporting my work and the channel. And I hope everybody is having a good day, and I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, so that's Brian Entin. Let's see what Tony Breuski has to say really quick to see if they have anything going on in this. But also make sure you like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat because there are a bunch of awesome and amazing people here. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. When you're a channel member, you get access to the members only live streams, which are Chill&A's and Q&A's. And starting tomorrow, I can start gifting 10 more memberships because it's a new month. And Shadow and I thank you very much for all of the support that we've been getting so far.
This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Breuski and Robin Drake.
You just shake your head sometimes. You just do, because there's so much information that's coming in the Nancy Guthrie case from so many different places. And the places that should be solid sources sometimes are, sometimes aren't. Sometimes this means something, sometimes that means something. At the end of the day, an 84-year-old grandmother with a heart condition was taken out of her own home in the dead of night. 5 months later, no body, no arrest, no answer. Harvey Levin offered to pay the Bitcoin ransom himself and track the money on camera. The FBI, he says, ghosted him for a month and told him to stand down because they're making progress. Meanwhile, today, this morning, this is new, Sheriff Nanos decided to get up, have a cup of coffee, and go on local radio and tell people, quote, I think... this is the quote, I think, ... the FBI has done a number of arrests for fake ransom notes. He thinks. The sheriff running this investigation isn't sure what the FBI is doing on his own case. That's where we're beginning this week. Robin Drake, retired FBI special agent, former chief of the county.
You know what? I looked at my time when it was already June 30th. So I wasn't thinking. I thought it was still 11:50 something. But tomorrow is only June 30th. It's Wednesday, is July 1st.
Our intelligence behavioral analysis program is with us to help us break all of this down. And I think the headline this morning is Nanos. And I don't know if it's a headline. And I don't like jumping onto things that we don't know a lot about. But it is the story. He is an official with power in this case saying that I think the FBI has done a number of arrests for false or fake ransom notes. He thinks. Robin, what's your read on that?
That's something you just shouldn't say.
Yes.
To think, when you, it's nothing but a caveat. It's a qualifier for, it's a qualifier. He's qualifying things that are coming out of his mouth. In other words, it's given him the ability to backtrack it if it's not true. If you're in a position of knowledge, authority, leadership on an investigation, any investigation, the last thing you do is present possibilities to an audience. You present facts, data, and details to an audience. Here's an example. So when we would do a behavioral assessment for a case agent in the field across the country, we did hundreds a year. And here's what we would do. We would go into the field office. We get all the materials ahead of time that we possibly could from the case agent, from language specialists, from subpoenas, FISAs, all this thing. I'd spread it to my team. So we take on all this knowledge, kind of like what we do on the show here, taking all the facts, data, and details. Then we go on site. We talk to the case agent themselves and any other experts they want to bring in to tell us about the individual we're going to be interacting with or creating a strategy around. And then the most important thing happens. We kick the case agent out of the room while we deliberate, because when we deliberate, we're going to say things like, I think, but you don't want to say that in front of the person who's actually receiving the information, because they'll lock onto something that may or may not be true. And that when that happens, they'll go down rabbit holes that go nowhere. They'll get sidetracked over here. They'll see something shiny over here. When you present to the consumer of your information, you have to be succinct, you have to be precise, you have to be accurate, and you have to be truthful. And so when you come out and give...
And by the way, now that I'm looking at Robin Drake, I did just buy his book. So I'm going to read his book and then try to invite him on the show.
Statements like, I think, you created more chaos in the world. So not less.
It's really par for the course with this. I'm not shocked by this statement. It certainly makes a headline. What just gets me about it is the seeming aloofness to it, that saying these words out loud are going to have an effect. He said from the get-go, I'm not used to people taking my words seriously or something of that nature. Well, maybe 6 months into this shit show, you should be. Maybe at this point, there's cause and effect to the things that come out of that hole in your head and the way that people react to them. And when you're talking about this, this is real life. This is a woman who is missing, who's probably dead, who has a family, who is grieving, who's being accused of being involved. They're going through their own hell, and you're just kind of like, well, how about you just shut the F up if you got nothing to say? I mean, that might be the best route. I don't know. Call me crazy.
I agree. Well, to me, it's very disrespectful and it's arrogant.
Yeah.
I don't care how many reps you have. I 22 years with the FBI before I retired, and then I retired in 2018. I've been doing commentary for a long time now, with you and other shows and on TV. The most important thing you can do is show respect to the people you're communicating with, understanding what they expect to hear from you, and prep. Yeah, every single time. I mean, I worked with case agents inside the Bureau that had been in the Bureau for 25 years, 30 years. When we were consulting, providing information and feedback, I don't care what it was. Everything we did, we prepped and we strategized how to present the information to others. Even though we had experience, we never, ever shot from the hip. We strategized as a team. What's a unified message we're going to put forward? And here was another rule we had. We would have had one speaker that represented the team when we're presenting our thoughts and opinions to consider. That's how we framed it. And we had one voice. If there was a dissenting voice on our team, you weren't allowed to say anything unless you asked permission and say, listen, Robin, I have another thought on this based on this. Would you mind if I interject that, or should we hold it to the end? Because we become extremely professional and respectful of the process so that we don't have mishaps like this. There is never, I don't care how expert you think you are.
I think they're doing the Bitcoin ones because cash can be marked. They can mark the cash so that it'd be really difficult to get away with it. They're probably thinking we have a better chance of getting away with it through the crypto world than being given marked bills, is what I would guess, Wink.
Don't shoot from the hip when people aren't expecting it. Now, you can caveat things that, listen, just off the top of my head, I haven't given this a lot of thought. In other words, you should caveat things that you haven't given thought to if you're going to shoot from the hip. But when you shoot from the hip like that, I find it disrespectful and definitely arrogant, because he doesn't think he needs to contemplate anything before he says it.
And I mean, let's examine what he would know for a moment. There's two totally different agencies. Obviously, this is the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and then you have the FBI. Two totally different investigations going on, simultaneous, but FBI is in the lead with this now. Would he know if they're arresting people? If the FBI is honing in? We know the one that was arrested early on, but we don't know of anyone else publicly other than Nanos uttering this out loud. Would he have?
Derek Colella, that's the one that Brew Crew over 50 was going over, the guy that changed his plea. And I don't know, it seemed like last week that was more of a story, and that it kind of seemed like we were closer last week to something for some reason. But today's Monday. And I was thinking, all right, Friday or Monday, there might be something that happens. Well, Friday and Monday have came and went, and there's nothing that's happened. So it kind of reminds me of that night, Friday the 13th, that ominous night. The night when Pima County law enforcement pulled out all of their equipment and had all the cars and the trucks and the forensics. And I didn't think it was anything at first, but then, they kept on building it up, and I thought, wow, maybe there is something going on. But nope. Shadow and I just got tricked. Nothing going on. It just seemed like it. And that kind of seems like a smaller version. What happened the other day seems like a smaller version of that. Well, maybe Derek Colella changing his plea means something. And maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it just means he was truly caught trying to exploit, and he knows it, so he's going to plead guilty. Maybe that's all it means. Maybe it's Occam's razor.
That knowledge? Because to me, it's like it's either they have or they haven't. What do you mean you think? Like, were you not paying attention when the FBI, you're like busy playing on your phone while you're on a conference call? Like, I think they mentioned something about arresting other people. Or is it just is he just speculating as if he's now a spectator and he doesn't hold the title of Pima County Sheriff?
Well, those words are speculation words. They're not definitive words. Like
Yeah.
he didn't say they have made arrests. He said, I think they made arrests. That's the difference there. Now, would he know? If he wanted to know, he would, because, it really depends on the relationship that both Pima County and the FBI have right now, because there's a huge amount of professional courtesy that goes back and forth between law enforcement. I mean, if you have a good, healthy relationship with the people you're working with, especially on a case like this, if someone's going to make an arrest related to your case, even though it's not going to impact, certain other things, you notify the person you've been working with, whether it's an official task force or an ad hoc task force or just a working group on this crime. That's what you do. You have collaboration, and you share information, you share details, and you share it with the lead investigator, not necessarily him. And that's where it's also interesting too, because say I'm on the FBI side, I'm leading the FBI team on the Nancy Guthrie investigation. And
So good question. How is cash more traceable? They can mark it. They can take a look at the serial numbers on the bills, and they can see those things. They can probably put like little chips in them too, for all I know. There's several ways they could.
No, first of all, you typically notify people that have any kind of tendril on this, that you're about to make arrest on this. And unless you've been dictated by headquarters, not because they've known to have leaks. I've had that before too. I mean, I remember right after 9/11 in New York City, I'll never get this. Oh my gosh. We got a lead to drive out to this hotel that we knew one of the hijackers had stayed at in New York prior to this. Mm-hmm. I had gotten this lead. I hop in a car. I'm in there with an NYPD guy and a couple other agency people heading out there. We had just gotten this lead in, and I hear the NYPD guy talking to his sergeant on the phone. He hangs up the phone with a sergeant. 3 seconds later, we're listening to the AM radio on the way out. It's being reported on the news exactly what was just said. I was like, holy shit. In those cases, your bosses then tell you, don't share this because it goes blah.
Yeah.
But typically, that collaborative environment that's created by case agents and investigators, they will share information like that because it's important for the investigation, so you don't step on each other's toes. And that's why him saying, I think, no, he should know. he should know. I'm kind of befuddled by this.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a I think type statement to make. But I mean, I guess enough on that. It's certainly an interesting headline. It's an interesting statement that was made. Maybe he'll clarify himself. Maybe he won't. I don't know if he's just talking like in general about the FBI, the way he spoke of like, yes, they've arrested people who've made fake notes in other cases. None of it was caveated. That's what makes it so confusing. It's like, well, are they honing in on more? I don't know. I don't
think so. If you understand him and the data points he's given us, it's part of his arc. His arc is he talks to everyone, news, media, and probably his family and friends is exactly the same. He doesn't have a filter for understanding where he's at, his audience, and who he needs to be communicating effectively with. I think he's got one mode of communication, which makes him extremely predictable and makes him chaos.
Which is pretty much what he admitted from the day one.
But here's the thing, Nanos isn't even as involved in this anymore. It is the FBI's task force that is in charge. Pima County sent over, I think, 4 detectives and a sergeant. And now they're working with the FBI task force. But Nanos is not the one overseeing the entire thing anymore. I think there's an FBI person overseeing it at this point.
I'm not used to people taking my words seriously. That's the last thing I think any sheriff should ever have come out of his mouth, but okay. Let's talk about the ransom notes a little bit because there seems to be a lot of noise out there on it. And I'm going to do my best to try and break this down a little bit. Coffin Daffer did a piece on this on her channel the other day over the weekend, Break the Case. Check that out too, because she really tries to help you understand, because it is very confusing. You got the first 2 notes that went to TMZ, that went to local TV stations. They're a little bit different, but from what we understand, and this is the best I can put it, is that those were likely from the same people, the first 2 notes. Now, there in total might have been about 4 or 5 notes, but some to TMZ, some to local TV, but essentially the same message across the board to different outlets, essentially communicating the same sort of things, and also the same sort of things about she's dead. There's some that say they're sorry. There's some that say that she's not. So you got all that. Then you have this other string of emails that have come in. we don't know if they're connected to the first two because we do not know if they are the same IP addresses. I want to be clear as day about that. There is no one out there that knows that these are the same IP addresses other than law enforcement. That has never been publicly stated, despite what you may hear on the internets or other shows. We do not know that. We don't know if it's the same IPs. And so there's that. So we don't know if they're coming from the same people. But there has certainly been a string of more notes that have been coming into TMZ that do share the same IP, not necessarily the original IP from those first two that Savannah and her family seem to take seriously. And this new string has been a pattern. But patterns don't always equal promise. They don't always equal that we're going to get somewhere. Some tend to be coming from predators who are looking for payday more than anything else. Just because there's a pattern doesn't mean it's all that legit. And there's been quite a few communications with Harvey at TMZ, and Harvey's been publicizing them and talking about them, and has even offered to pay the Bitcoin on it. And the FBI told him to pull back. What is your take on that continued communication back and forth? And this is a communication that I'm talking about that has the device in it. They claim they have video of Nancy Guthrie and the kidnapper on this device in a location that they'll tell you where it's at for a Bitcoin. It's a device. It's not even just a picture. It's a device. Imagine the cornucopia of information on a device. What's your take on that second string of pattern emails that Harvey is talking about at TMZ?
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So there's a few things that I'd be considering right now as the investigator. If I'm actually making a lot of progress, because again, we do not know what's going on behind the scenes with the actual investigators. We're just getting all the conjecture and noise that were being filtered out or invented outside. Who knows? So if they're actually getting closer and doing, in the glass half full, getting closer to seeing who this is and locking in, the potential to ignore that is high. It might be so incongruent with the other data that they're getting in, saying that's just nothing but BS, so we're not going to pay attention to it, or put it under investigation for interfering with law enforcement investigation. So that's another charge I could bring up on folks like that. Or they say, well, this might be legit. And because we're not getting anything officially on this, on whether they think it's legit or not, it's really, really hard to say. All I know is that everything we're seeing, that included, the probability of it being related is really slim. It just slim.
And it gets a little more ridiculous as the days go on. One of the later notes that we've understood from what Harvey has said, and I'm not saying anything bad about Harvey here, he's just reiterating the information that he's getting, is that the Bitcoin wallet, the original, is not accessible. So we need to go to a different wallet now.
Yep.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like it might be a different person or anything. Like, that's not the right wallet. I'm the same person, but I can't get into that one anymore. So why don't you put the money over here? Because I'm certainly the same person. I mean, it's just, that's a red flag, I think, number one. But number two, the idea that there's this device out there that has the image on, and they won't. I mean, look, if you want to make the money, show them an image. Just show them a quick screen grab. You'll get your money pretty quick. If someone can authenticate that, you will get your fucking money. Then do it.
Hotline.
Yeah. But if you don't have it, you're not going to do it. This is mystery device. Now, this device, I mean, look at every case we cover here. What's the one thing that so many criminals forget about half the time? This and what it can do, the tracking on it, the apps that track you in ways you have no idea they're tracking you on. Your location.
Honestly, Shadow and I are getting a little bit bored of this episode, actually. What do you think? Because it seems like they're just going over the same things that Brian Entin went over, the same things that Ashley Banfield went over the other day.
Data. There's so many things that if they were to find this device, if it is involved with this, it would tell them so much. And probably not a lot of great things about the person who is supposedly providing this either. It seems like, as they even said, they're like putting it out on a silver platter. I mean, that would be a silver platter, quite honestly, if they have a device like that. But why go through?
So maybe we should pause this because, like I said, they're getting me to tune out. Like, at least with Brian's hour there, I was pretty engaged with it. But I know when I'm starting to tune out, it's like, we've heard this already. We've heard what they're doing. We've heard it. So, we'll go over something else probably tomorrow night. Matt Murphy interview will be uploaded tomorrow, which should be cool. Dr. Z is going to be on Thursday. Dr. Gherkin, the expert on female psychopaths, I'm interviewing her. She's from Australia, by the way, Nanny Goat. Sunday night, my time, which I guess is Monday, her time. Then the estranged parent from Estranged and Rearranged. I'll be interviewing her. Can't remember the date of that, but that's coming up there too. But also, I think the OnlyFans thing is starting, right? The that woman. What the hell's the OnlyFans woman's name? Clemens, Courtney Clemens or something like that. That might be one to go over. That OnlyFans woman case. I heard there was another development in that Brazilian bridge fail, the bridge jump fail, rope jumping. Although I didn't actually watch the video, but that's something that we might be able to go over tomorrow too. Taylor Parker, that's a good one, Chatty. I was actually watching the beginning of that the other day. I saw Annie Elise went over it. Annie Elise, she's a good benchmark of what's kind of popular as well. Her, The Emily Show, Law and Crime Network, Brian Entin, of course. You get a barometer, or you can take the temperature to see what's popular and what's not. So she went over that. I didn't watch the whole. Did you watch it, Chatty? Did you watch the entire documentary? I did not, actually. But I heard it was pretty gruesome, is what I heard. And she's fairly insane. But perhaps I should watch that for my interview with Dr. Gherkin, because I have a feeling she might be a psychopath, that woman. Although I can't even tell you I know exactly what happened. But I heard it was bad. But I don't know if I heard correctly. Miss Kim, did you watch it? Nanny Goat, did you watch it? Did anyone watch it with Taylor Parker, the Netflix one? Jane says, you're not going to cover Charlie Kirk preliminary? Just JW, don't know what you think. I would go over it. I have nothing against going over some political things. No, I can't say the same for some people. Some people might not like me going over it, but I mean, it's true crime. I mean, that's true crime more than it is politics. Some people will try to bring politics into it, no doubt, but in fact, here's the thing I would say about that, Jane. It's probably it is the most appropriate to see that case through a true crime lens, to not let the distortions of political theater and politics distort how people see it. We saw how that can happen with the Carmelo Anthony case. Matt Murphy and I talked about that, by the way. And I think politics and race really distorted how a lot of people saw that case, unfortunately. And the right-wing version of that could be Charlie Kirk, honestly. So we'll have to see. And I'll grant it, just like with Carmelo Anthony, you say that to the people that are kind of twisting it, they'll never admit it. They'll never admit it. Instead, they were calling me a liar and telling me I need to educate myself. I was like, dude, I don't know what to say about that. I'd say, yes, there's racial injustice in the country, but that's not an example of it, in my opinion. And so for the other side, though, I would say, hey, yes, there are conspiracies, but is this Charlie Kirk case an example of one? Well, we'll have to see, because I've heard a lot of questions thrown out. I've heard a lot of things that don't make so much sense, but I've also seen some people defending those things. So we'll have to take a deep dive into it, right? I don't know what I think of it right now, have to dive into the evidence, dive into what people are making up, dive into what people are exaggerating or trying to implicate others in, or just asking questions. That's the big one, right? Just asking questions. No big deal. Just asking questions. All right, Chatty Cathy, that's what I thought it was. She killed a woman and stole the baby. Shows up at a hospital claiming she had just given birth. Yeah, I saw that part. I didn't see the end of it because they went into other things for a while. So clearly she's deranged in some way. Psychopathic, I guess. Maybe a severe borderline, maybe. Not good. Jane says, it's starting in Erica and the parents are going to be there, so I thought I'd ask. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I got nothing against going over it, Jane. In fact, little known fact in the channel, some of the most popular streams I ever did in the beginning were going over Candace Owens. We had no problems going over political things at a time. As I got more popular, though, some people started liking it less and less, but Shadow and I have to stay true to our roots, though, too. Because I do think, not to be arrogant or conceited or grandiose or fill in the blank, but I think we have a pretty good level-headed perspective on many of these things. And I think in this day and age, that is needed more than ever. I try to be fair, whether it's the Carmelo Anthony case, Gracie the Giraffe case, or Jeffrey Metcalf, or Michael McKee, Nick Reiner, Nancy Guthrie. Who else have we been going over? Brian Hooker, Mackenzie Sharila. We go over it all. And I try to give my perspective. And, on every case, some people will agree and some people will disagree. There's no problems with that. Although what you'll notice is, with certain topics, disagreements become less acceptable. And then people become a little more emotional and they get upset. I don't really like that very much. It's very difficult to speak to those kinds of people because they shut down, which is unfortunate. But, the more passionate people are about topics, the harder it is for them to stay calm and have rational discussion, which is fine. It happens. People are human. I mean, fill in the blank. Racial injustice is one area that happens. Israel-Palestine is another area that happens. And it's just, it is what it is. It is what it is. Oh, thank you very much, Laura. Laura says you're a very genuine person, and your channel showed that. It is important to me to be genuine. To be fake would be to it'd be icky. It'd be icky, and I just wouldn't like it. Boat dive. Boat dive like Brian Hooker. I saw that too, Miss Kim. There was a baby found in a porta potty at a festival. The hell was that all about, huh? You said a honeypot. Huh. That's pretty gruesome, though, no? How old was the baby, Miss Kim? Do you know? Hello there, Dale. Long time no see. I feel like there's like a bug in my eye or something. I don't know if I'm going insane or not. Ah! That's also a lot of people's problems, Snoop, right? A lot of people go in that direction too. And honestly, I don't mind that. I don't mind that as long as they're still willing to debate the substance. Okay, debate the substance, that's fine. But what I don't like as much is when it really just becomes an antagonistic battle right away. And they're just trying to get you. I got you. I got you in a gotcha moment. I won the conversation. That's stressful. That's stressful for sure. That's right, Danielle. The black sheep. gave birth in the porta potty, but then abandoned it. Is that what she did? That's terrible. Anne says, at the beginning, I looked in Kirk's background. We will have a different perspective resulting from experience and political view and where we are from. Yes, however, the facts should be the facts in the case. And that's from the true crime lens. That is how you'd want to see it. You see it through the what are the facts. But of course, it's going to be tough. I get it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. But it is what it is. We're going to do our best. We'll do our best, and that's all we can do. That's all we can do. Bye, Felicia, from next Friday. Let it crown. Oh, my Lord. It was an interesting choice, right? An interesting choice to go through with giving birth and then leaving it in a porta potty. I don't know about that one. Yeah, we'll be taking a look at all of it. Because again, this little spurt of Nancy stuff might be coming to an end in a minute, depending on the news. So there's going to be other things to go over. And like I said, I'm doing a lot of interviews coming up here too. So that's also my plan. But as you're here, make sure you like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice in the like button. Most of you here are already subscribed already. And thank you. Thank you for all of your support. Shadow says thank you as well. We thank you for all the super chats, super stickers, and people who became a channel member or gifted channel memberships. Thank you to Miss Kim and Laura and Livin for modding tonight. Niven's been here more often, which I love to see. You got it, Wendy. And that's what a lot of people say, Miss Kim. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I think anymore. I've gone back and forth. I've gone back and forth on what I believe. Well said, Nanny Goat. Nanny Goat says, all children deserve parents, but not all parents deserve children. Correct. Because no one chooses their parents. And that certainly could be, Miss Kim. Certainly could be. But Shadow and I love you all. Miss Kim, D, Ann, Chatty Cathy, Laura, Nanny Goat, Wendy, Jane, Danielle, Linda, Jackie, Bethany, Autumn, Snoop, Dale. Unfortunately for Autumn, it wasn't as pleasurable of an experience because of the ads. I changed the ads to what YouTube suggested, and it became a worse experience for Autumn, unfortunately. But Shadow and I highly recommend everyone get YouTube Premium. I could never watch YouTube anymore without YouTube Premium, by the way. So, because without it, it's just awful. It's just awful. I wouldn't be able to watch. It'd be too disrupted. But yes, Shadow and I love you too, Nanny Goat, and Dee, and Chatty, and Miss Kim, and Wendy, and Jane, and everyone. Thank you all for being here. Linda, you know who Shadow is. Shadow the Night Owl here. Shadow's my buddy and the mascot of the channel. Yes, you got to get on YouTube Premium. It's like, I think it's $15 to $20. I get it. Not everyone can afford that in their budget, but if you can, it's highly worth it, in my opinion. And 3 months free, Miss Kim. So you get 3 months of it before you'd have to pay. Good suggestion, Miss Kim, or good reminder. So yes, thank you very much for watching, everybody. Keep your eyes open. I might be doing a day stream tomorrow. We'll see. But I'll also be uploading the Matt Murphy interview tomorrow too. So with that, over and out, everybody. Thank you very much. Nope, he is not. You are correct about that, Laura. I did take Shadow down. Didn't want to appear too ridiculous in front of Matt Murphy. No, it's during the day. Interviews are during the day, so Shadow the Night Owl, he is not on his perch because it's the daytime. Love you too, Chatty. Shadow the Night Owl here, Linda. This is Shadow the Night Owl, my buddy and spirit animal. YouTube Premium is what you buy so that you don't get any YouTube ad interruptions. It's actually, it really helps. It really does. And I'm not just saying that. I would never probably watch YouTube if not for YouTube Premium anymore. It's just so disruptive to not have it. You got it, Dale. If you can, Autumn, 3 months free, and I would say it's definitely worth it. But all right, everybody. Shadow and I are going to hit the hay here, or not hit the hay. It's actually popcorn, carrots, and orange time. And we're going to take it from there. So thank you again, everyone. And we'll see you all tomorrow evening.